All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to part 2 of this series on Typst. So a new typesetting language. I have open here the same file as part 1. So if you haven't watched that one, just go back and start with that particular video. You can see here we have our simple file. I am on the website for the editor typst.app, which is probably the easiest way to test out the language if you're just starting. You can see on the left-hand side that we have our main file, which is main.type. That's the file we created in the first video. After that, at the bottom, we have the figure file, which is the figure we have right here. Again, first video. And for today, for this second video, I've decided to talk about references. Reference management is one of the most important things when you're starting out with a typesetting language or an editor. And I've added here 2 bibliography files. One is refs.bib and another is refs.yaml. So you will see why there are 2 files here. They have the same name. And here at the top of the file from last time, I just added a bunch of comments. You can see you can comment out things in Typst using 2 slashes. And this is basically a to-do list for us in this video. So let's start out by numbering sections, because right now you can see our introduction and our section on tables and figures. These are not numbered. So the first thing we're going to do is number these sections by coming to the top of the file, probably before the title, and we'll just add some information here using the function set. Now, set is a very important function that you use in the quote-unquote preamble of Typst files. And this allows us to define certain elements of our text, our document. And later we'll explore this function a little more when we talk about page size, margins, and all of that. But for now, we will just use set on a particular element, which is the heading element. And inside the heading element, you can already see that we have this option here, which is numbering. And inside, after numbering, we can just decide what type of numbering we want to use. And I want to use something like this. So I want to have a dot to separate sections from subsections, but I don't want a dot at the end. Now, if you add a dot at the end, you can see the text adjusts accordingly. But for now, we can just do 1.1. And you can see that everything else falls into place. So subsection 1.1 is now tables, and figures is subsection 1.2. So that gives us numbered sections, very easy. You can do things like capital A.1 as well, which is kind of useful for appendices. But for now, we'll just deal with 1.1. Again, this is a very basic intro. So that's the first thing on the to-do list. The second thing involves creating references. And if you've used LaTeX, you know that this sometimes involves loading a package and then adding something at the bottom of the document. But here it's a little it's simpler basically. So if you go to the bottom of the document, we can just use the function bibliography, which is already there. And inside bibliography, we will just point to a references file. So I've already uploaded a references file here in 2 formats, .bib, which is, if you've used LaTeX, you already know what this is. And it's pretty universal, so you can kind of convert files into .bib and out of .bib, depending on what reference management system you prefer. And also YAML. And the reason why YAML is here is because there is a new file format. Now let's start with bib. I'll just select .bib. Now you can see at the bottom of the document here, we have bibliography refs.bib, and nothing special appears yet because we haven't cited anyone. Now, if I go to my refs.bib, you'll notice that there's only one entry, and it's this book by Elizabeth Ziga, The Sounds of Language, an Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. So I'll just cite this one particular reference here. So I'll go back here, and maybe towards the end of the document, maybe let's just do a new paragraph above the figure or something, and I'll just say according. So something like this is a typical citation in Typst, And now I'll just use the add sign, and you can see the editor already found the only entry that's available. So if I hit enter, you will see that we now have a numbered citation. So 1, and at the bottom under bibliography, we have the entry. Now, normally in linguistics, we don't do numbered citations or references. We usually do APA. So if you want to do APA, you can just come down here and select style and just type APA, and it will change automatically. You can also change the title of the references by writing something like this. So you can do a title inside a bibliography argument function. So this is super useful because in a single function, you can select your bibliography file, you can select the style you'll be using, and also the title of that section. Very useful, very straightforward, and user-friendly as well. Now, right here, this is a typical citation with the @ sign, which is it's practical, but oftentimes you want to format your citation a little more, and for those situations, you will use the cite function. So and I'm going to use the backticks just to give you a sense of some coding formatting. So you can see now that in the text, we're literally printing the code. You can use the cite function for more, for custom citation or something like that. So for example, this. So we'll do cite, and then inside we're going to do Ziga. You can see we have to use the less than and greater than sign around the keyword. And after that, you can choose a form, and the form I'll choose here is the prose form, which would be equivalent to something like in LaTeX /cite T, I think, something like that. Whereas the typical @ sign will give you cite P if you're used to LaTeX. In any case, if you check the documentation for cite, you will notice that there are many forms. You can cite just the year, just the author. So all the things you expect you would need to do with the typesetting language are available here. But note that up until this point, we haven't really loaded any packages, right? So if you're used to LaTeX, at this point, you're probably already loading a handful of packages for figures and specific tables, for example, and references. Maybe you like using NetBib like I do. But here, we aren't really loading anything up until this point. So now we have the references, and I just want to show you the other possibility because, of course, there's a new format, which is the YAML format. And this is an attempt also to kind of revamp the references files and, just to get something a little more modern and organized. And it uses the YAML structure. So it looks like this. So if you compare the bib LaTeX style, which is this, to the new YAML style, you can see it looks a little cleaner. It's just an option. It's still pretty young. I'm not switching to YAML right now, but I'm assuming that in the future it will make perfect sense to kind of convert your bib library into YAML. It doesn't matter for now. You can just use whatever library you have as long as it's, if it's .bib, it will work quite well. All right, so this is for references. And next thing on the list is to create some page breaks, because right now references is right under our figure, so we might as well push it onto the next page. And for that, you could use /new page in LaTeX. Here you do page break, and it just goes to the next page. So again, straightforward. And again, since it's a function, starts with with hashtag. All right, so now we're going to label figures and sections just to show you an example of cross references, not only citations and all that, but also cross references. And again, we use less than and greater than sign. So we don't need to use, /label. Instead, we just do this. So I'll just do sec intro for the introduction, for example. And then you could, inside the section for tables, you could do we saw in, and then here you just do sec intro that blah, blah, blah. and that's it, right? So you can see it's pretty straightforward. If you used Quarto and R, I mean, it's not that different from that. So you get cross-references here. Same thing for figures. So if I come down here and I do something like fig, and I don't know, maybe table makes more sense. So TBL, my table. And here we have a figure. So let's do fig, my figure, or just PWD for prosodic word. Now you can refer to those things. For example, see table 1 and figure 1. There you go. So the cross-reference is also very straightforward. Again, you can see compilation is almost instantaneous, and that gives us the possibility of, cross-references out of the box. We don't have to load anything. It's all there. Final thing is to use color, because up until this point we're using links. So we did links last time. So here we have a link to Typst, but it doesn't look like a link because it's just as black as the rest of the text. So this allows us to, this is the time where we go back to the top of the document and we start to set up a couple of things. So for this particular video, the only thing we'll do is change colors for references and cross-references, just to give you a sense of the things we can do. And for that, we're going to use the function show. So you will see with time that there's hashtag set and hashtag show, and set will set things up, whereas show will apply specifically to the aesthetics of the document. So we're going to do show for link, basically saying I want links to show as follows. And then inside of that, we will set the text for the link. So using the set function, again, because we already have one hashtag at the beginning of the line, we are already in code mode. No need to have another hashtag for the function set. It just recognizes it as a function. And inside, we'll change the color. So let's say we want the links to be blue. Now you can see it's already blue in here, and it's a shade of blue. It's not the primary blue, the basic one. But the nice thing is that you can play around with the color by using certain functions that are appended. For example, let's say I want to lighten the blue a little bit by, 30%. And so you can see here, it can just change. So if I lighten the blue by 70%, now it's barely visible. Or I'll just leave it to 20% or so. So you can see it's pretty easy. And now I can just copy this and apply the same logic to the references simply by showing refs instead of link. So instead of having link right here, I will do ref. And now let's just pick another color. For example, orange. So you can see sections and bibliography. It's all orange. You can also darken. So you can do darken by 20%, and you can see now it's a different shade of orange. So again, very intuitive. This allows you to quickly change specific characteristics of the document at the top. Not extremely unlike LaTeX. So there are some similarities, but the code is just much cleaner. And it's also easier to kind of get the logic. And we will explore a little more of this later on in a later video. So this is it for video number 2. And I hope this is useful. See you in part 3.